What can you learn about world literature from reading every single one of 120 winners of the Nobel Prize for Literature? What can you learn about world history? What can you learn about life? Because reading history, reading literature, after all, that's what it's really for, isn't it? To help you get along with your life. And has there ever been anyone who can say they've read every single winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature? Certainly, before I began this little challenge that I'm doing on the Burning Archive YouTube channel, I'm Jeff Rich. I only read about, 40 odd of the Nobel Prizes for the winners of the Nobel Prize for Literature. But by October this year, I plan to have read every single one of the 120 winners and show you how you can do it too. I'm doing all the details of this incredible literary challenge, Ultimate Book Lovers Challenge, over at my Substack, jeffrich.substack.com. And in this video, I'm going to kind of introduce you to all of those 7 winners and point to you how you can read those people for free through various internet resources, which are really easy to get to. Well, relatively easy to get to. The winners I'm looking at this time in this video is from 1915 to 1921. There was no prize in 1914. Guess why? There was a world war that started in August 1914, and that kind of really got in the way of the Nobel Prize for Literature. But it resumed the following year, and in that year, who was the winner other than, let's get his picture up here, Romain Rolland, and he's photographed there with no less than Joseph Stalin. Yes, indeed, Joseph Stalin, the leader of Russia or the Soviet Union in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, and for some of the 1950s. And the man on the right there, that's Romain Rolland. But who was Romain Rolland, and why was he standing there with Joseph Stalin? Because he did win the Nobel Prize for Literature after all. Well, he was born in 1866 in France, and he began life really as a historian. He did a PhD that looked at the history of opera and then started to teach music theatre, but he wasn't really terribly suited to personality-wise to teaching, so he started writing literature. He started writing plays, which were conceived as kind of popular dramas for workers, because he had a kind of left-wingish socialist base. He was writing popular theatre. I think Bertolt Brecht, but a little bit less German maybe. And then he began writing novels, which were quite modernist, one of the early modernist winners of the Nobel Prize. And in his novel, he had a kind of alter ego figure, Jean Christophe. And this is a novel that had 10 volumes to it, an enormous novel that was published between 1904 and 1912. And it's sort of a very loosely structured plot which follows how the hero, Jean Christophe, responds to all the failures and the conflicts and the sort of cultural chauvinism developing before World War I in 1914. This was the masterpiece that won him the Nobel Prize. And you can actually read Romain Rolland's masterpiece. That's not it, but he also wrote, as you can see here, a book about Mahatma Gandhi. Why? Why would Romain Rolland write a book about Mahatma Gandhi? There you can see the man who became one. with the universal being? Well, let me tell you the story. Well, he was quite critical of society. His novels were critical of society, and he was really a humanist and a believer in internationalism and in pacifism, in a way quite similar to some of the sort of non-violent beliefs of Mahatma Gandhi. Romain Rolland also shared a lot of perspective and ideas and fellowship, maybe even, with the great 1913 Indian Bengali writer Rabindranath Tagore, who I've covered in one of the previous videos on the Nobel Prize challenge. So that was why he wrote the book on Gandhi. And that book on Gandhi was published in 1924 and really helped strengthen Gandhi's reputation in the West. But World War I was the thing that really shocked and scarred Romain Rolland. He actually fled France to neutral Switzerland, and there he published a book called Above the Battle, or Au-dessous de la mêlée, and if I've said that terribly, French readers can correct my pronunciation, as a protest against the war. And his winning of the Nobel Prize in the same year helped give his arguments even more force. His internationalist sympathies drew him, after 1917, 1918, to the Soviet Union. This, in the 1920s, 1930s, was time, if you can see it in Babylon, Berlin, there was similar social tensions. In France, there was some, authoritarianism on the right, and there was, a popular front that was both resistant but also sympathetic to the Soviet Union in the 1920s and 1930s. It wasn't seen as quite so bad in those days, although a few people were starting to become aware of the horrors of the Civil War and the terror and all the rest of it. But Romain Rolland was the sort of de facto cultural ambassador of France to the Soviet Union. He became, in a way, a kind of European version of Rabindranath Tagore and really believed in how cultures can learn from each other and interact with each other. And he also really believed in the internationalist cause rather than the nationalism of the sort of West European empires. He sought to immerse himself in all the different streams of history and civilization, and he wrote in that book of 1915, Above the Battle, "The true man of culture is not he who makes of himself and his ideal the centre of the universe, but who, looking around him, sees, as in the sky, the stream of the Milky Way, thousands of little flames which flow with his own, and who seeks neither to absorb them nor to oppose them his own course, but to give himself the religious persuasion of their value and of the common source, the fire by which all alike are fed." Now, what you can also do is, as well as reading Romain Rolland at places like the Internet Archive and Project Gutenberg, there is also a free LibriVox recording right here on YouTube that you can also read. And there you can see Volume 1 of Jean-Christophe, Volume 1 by Romain Rolland. So that's the 1915 winner of the Nobel Prize.